Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Rioch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the Business Connection, a leading business podcast talking about business in the world. I'm Tom Rioch, an American from Pittsburgh, living in Brazil, known as the King of Networking, and talking from my podcast studio in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil. Today's guest is Astrid Rizzi, and she's joining us again from São Paulo. Astrid Rizzi and I met several years ago at an American Chamber of Commerce meeting in São Paulo. Astrid is founder of Great Start here in Brazil and is pioneer in the secretarial recruitment. She's a specialist in executive secretarial search and mentoring, and is also a motivational speaker. Astrid and Great Start was the first company specializing in placement of top-level executive assistants and has been in business since 1974. Astrid, I know you have interviewed and placed thousands of people over these 47 years. How has recruitment based on technology changed? Have we lost the personal touch between people?
Good morning, Tom. It's nice to be here with you, and thank you for remembering me. Well, as you know, before internet and before LinkedIn, I was always called in by multinational and Brazilian companies who needed the very special person for their CEO or their president. Companies like MasterCard, Visa, DuPont, Cargill were all my clients. And I placed people who stayed 25 years. You know, that was the sort of work that I've always done. Because I have a very good sense of finding the right people. It's almost like a miracle. People used to say, Astrid, how can you get the special person so fast? I said, well, it's because I interviewed the boss personally and found out exactly all the details, everything he needed, not just the qualifications, but I needed to see his personality and find the right person to match him personally. Because not just a professional match that you must make. Okay, you get someone who has an MBA and a BA and a lot of experience, but if she doesn't have the right personality, in every way, the right mentality to work for him, it just won't work. Companies hire because of the curriculum, what they find in the curriculum, and then they fire because of problems. Like the person doesn't have good relationships, the person can't communicate, she's not a team player. So all this appears after she's hired. And this is why it was very important. The work that I've always done was very, very personal, very personalized. I would always interview personally the secretaries who would come to me, and I would evaluate them and find their potential, okay, everything that you have to offer. So it would be very easy for me to find the right person. But with internet, LinkedIn, and all the virtual means of recruitment nowadays online, this has changed. I often see the same ads of companies on LinkedIn sometimes for weeks and months. And I say, my goodness, if they would have come to me, it would have solved after 10 days, you know, and guaranteed, because I give a 12-month guarantee. But, of course, it doesn't work that way anymore. They prefer to place their ads online and recruit everybody they can find, and it's based on algorithms and all sorts of psychological tests and all that, which I don't need to do. Right. So this is how it has changed the market for me. So, because who is really finding the difficulty now are not the companies so much, because the companies place the ads and interview hundreds of people sometimes. It's the secretaries, the people who are looking for jobs, who somehow are all saying, Astrid, nobody calls me. I've sent my curriculum to 20 companies and I don't get called. What's the problem? Why can't I find a job? So about 5 or 6 years ago, a good friend of mine that you probably know, Robert Wong, who used to be the president of Corn Ferry many years.
Right.
Robert Wong told me, Astrid, you are the best person to do mentoring because you've got the experience, the know-how, the personal touch that nobody I know has. So, Astrid, start doing mentoring. And so this is what I've been doing, mentoring secretaries and other people who can't find a job and they don't have any idea what the problem is. Sometimes it's their curriculum, which is 4 pages long, and I say, look, that doesn't work. Sometimes it's because they put their age in the curriculum, and I say, that eliminates you already.
Right.
So they say, okay, I can't get a job because I have a baby of 10 months old and nobody will accept me. I go for an interview, and when the interviewer, normally it's a very junior person who does the first selection. But Tom, she has the power in her hands to eliminate fantastic people.
Right.
Because she works with questions within a box, the box that says that if she has a small child, I can't consider her. So they don't look at all the other things. For example, when I place someone who has a child, I know what I'm doing. I know because I've asked her exactly what sort of infrastructure she has, how does her family help, and I know that she would do a great job. I don't eliminate people the way they are getting eliminated nowadays virtually. And so the personal touch, yesterday I did a mentoring with a secretary who now lives in Italy, in Rome. I had met her maybe 15 years ago. I had interviewed her, and she called me. She said, Astrid, I'm having an interview with a president of a company I really want to work for, and I need your help. So we spent 4 hours online, and she just sent me a WhatsApp message saying that I helped her so much. She feels so confident now. So this is the sort of work I do.
No, I like I said, I knew you, and when we first met years ago at the American Chamber, it was exactly within a group of executive secretaries, because there was that group in American Chamber, which was literally, when we're talking about women, because it was mostly women, and as you mentioned, it's she and he, and in the past it was he looking for she, right?
Yes.
Even that's changed today. And to much of what you just mentioned, internationally, in the States anyway, companies won't even ask an age. They can't ask an age. They can't ask anything about childcare because it's prohibited by law. The important thing is that you know Brazil. You've been here for many years. You understand the country as I do. And I think what we have in common, we've been through so many different situations in Brazil. Many CEOs, either if they come here to work or if they're responsible for Brazil from afar, they need to understand the culture. And they won't do that once they step off the plane or once they turn on their computer. But they do need a person here who knows the culture, who can speak the language. Because obviously one thing is speaking English. The other thing in Brazil, which you know as I do, if you don't have an assistant, if you don't have executive level assistants who speak Portuguese, you can't get the base one here.
And that, Tom, is exactly the sort of person I place, because as you know, Great Start was founded as the first company in Brazil to offer temporary office space and secretarial assistance with me there, because I had helped 7 companies when I was a secretary to start up in Brazil.
Right.
So I knew all the problems that everybody would face, looking for an office, looking for people, trying to find the right lawyers and accountants, and then how about buying the furniture and helping the family settle down. So Great Start was the first what they would call now co-working.
Right.
I call temporary offices. And I would help companies start up in Brazil, like Uncle Ben's Rice, and Spencer Stewart and Measure X, which became Honeywell. All these, Kimberly Clark, companies would come and spend sometimes days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, until they would until we would help them to find their permanent office.
Right.
And staff, also staff, of course. So this is why even today, companies don't need, when the CEO comes to start a company in Brazil, he doesn't really need the temporary office space anymore, because he has all the help he needs with Google. He just uses his cellular and he can ask any question. But he needs someone.
He needs people. That's it. He needs people.
Person he needs is someone who would be an executive secretary, personal assistant, and office manager.
Right.
And I am the best person in Brazil to find these people. And they're looking for them on LinkedIn for months. They have to interview hundreds, sometimes dozens of people. Okay, it's all done virtually online, but if they would come to me, I would find them the right person within 10 days, 2 weeks. But this is very difficult to get across. So I help the people who are trying to find the right job. This is what I am forced to do now.
Well, I wouldn't consider that being forced, because I think that's the huge opportunity. Because what I know many of the people that you placed over the years, and to be honest, many of the people you talked about, people working in a company for 25 years. That's true. In those 25 years, and I know that because I'm even here in Campinas, the same thing at the American Chamber. The foreign management that came wouldn't be here for more than 2 years. So it was sort of like a revolving door CEO or president. And there are companies today that every 2 years they change the CEO or the president.
Yeah, but
the people stay. And those people that stay were people who knew, and as you, the point that you made was the office management. It's actually the company management. It's the operational person that keeps the company moving, whether it has a CEO or not.
Exactly. Let me give you an example. At Cargill, I placed 2 assistants. I don't know if you met Douglas Linder. He was the president many years ago in the 80s, I think it was. Yeah. I placed 2 people to work for him, and then he left Brazil. But these people were so good that they went through at least 7, 8 presidents. I don't remember them because they were encyclopedias.
Right.
They know exactly everything about Cargill. So if a president comes in after 20 years and he asks the secretary, now exactly what happened in Cargill 20 years ago, she would know the stories. She would know everything. So how would she have to be fired? No way. But the thing is, when I place people who can work with any personality, who knows how to adapt to the personality. Nowadays, they have to work for 5, 6 different people, not just one person. So they have to handle everybody. They can't be, I only want to work for one person. It doesn't work that way anymore.
We don't have one per. You have a matricial organization. You may respond to a person in Italy, another one in New York, and a third one in China. And, shortly we're going to be talking to people on Mars. So that's what's going to be happening. And from where you are and what you do is finding and helping those persons. It's not only women. I know also that you offer your services to anybody.
I started Renault in Brazil. I placed the first 15 people in Renault when they started, 15. And that was 2 executive secretaries to help them start from scratch because they didn't even have a chair or a table. So people who would really dedicate themselves, then they started asking for engineers to form their purchasing department. Engineers with English, French, and MBAs and automotive experience. And then they asked for marketing people. And my specialty, of course, is the fact that I am multilingual. So I can find people with fluent English, fluent French, and this is something that Brazilians have difficulty doing.
Right.
Companies have to hire an English teacher to test the secretaries they're going to hire to see if her English is good enough.
That's true.
They don't have to worry about that. I will guarantee that the English is good.
Well, Astrid, you still are the special person that I met years ago.
Thank you.
No, and seriously,
thank you.
What you do and how you're doing it today, because we've all been, the country, the world has been through a pandemic. And what has happened, people and companies have learned that they need to work virtually.
Exactly.
And the future is that. So I think the example that you gave of a person in Italy using your services, and that's mentoring. And I really believe that's the future. People need help in understanding how tomorrow's world is, and how do they fit, and how do they find that fit. Because even today's CEOs don't know what tomorrow looks like. They don't know how to interview because they're talking of the past themselves. So I think what you're offering to persons is to prime them for an interview. And that interview today is not going to be face-to-face. That interview today is going to be somewhere. It could be by cell phone. It could be while they're walking down the street. That's how the rules have changed. The rules of engagement are completely different.
Exactly, exactly. For example, this person in Italy is now working for an Italian company, and I know the Italian mentality. And she was explaining her problems there with her boss and being treated. And then there is a German company who wants her in Italy. So I also know the German mentality. And I prepared her for this interview, and she just sent me a beautiful WhatsApp today that she feels so confident and secure. And all it took was 4 hours with me online.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we're doing. The world is online. We met face-to-face, and we're generating a podcast that's online.
Exactly.
We're generating audio content that will be heard and listened to throughout the world. And that's tomorrow. That's not today.
And you are doing a great job promoting Brazil, Tom, all these years. This is fantastic what you do.
Well, we both know, Astrid, and for our listeners, Astrid is like me. She's come from another country. She's here. She understands the culture. She's a multicultural person. And we both know how the outside world knows so little about Brazil.
Exactly.
And that hasn't changed over my 50 years or your 47 years. People think Brazil may be the size of Denmark. They talk about Brazil as being a small, it's not. And there are many Brazils within Brazil. So we know the Brazils, and we know that Brazil doesn't promote itself well also.
Yeah, and unfortunately.
That's it. So what we do and continue to do is to help people understand a complex country that's full of opportunities.
Exactly, exactly. And I love helping companies start up because I did that when I was a secretary for 18 years. My last job was with Young and Rubicam, where I did everything. Always I was the first person being hired, having to find an office, having to staff people, get the staff, having to buy the furniture. And when Young and Rubicam was ready to place their first ad, nobody would accept them because they were known they needed a fiador in Brazil, or they needed to pay a bank in order to place ads. They said, "Who is this Young and Rubicam?" And they spoke with, my boss spoke with Price Waterhouse, spoke with his lawyers. Well, how can we operate in Brazil? And they said, okay, you can get a bank guarantee. And the bank charges 1% a month on everything,
Right.
on whatever you rent, offices or apartments, or the media, the TV ads, everything. You have to pay 1% a month. And my boss turned to me and he said, Astrid, who do we know that would help us? Because the lawyer says if we have someone who has a house and who is willing to be a fiador, then we are okay. And Astrid, as usual, always helpful. I said, well, I have a house, a small house. So I ended up being the fiador for Young and Rubicam to start operations in Brazil. So my reputation, Tom, I'm a problem solver. Whatever problem the company comes to me and says, we have a problem with this, with that, Astrid finds the solution.
Well, you'd see we're still in business because there still are problems. Exactly. And many of those problems, what you mentioned, fiador is an undersigner or co-signer, and to that today still exists. You need guarantees. You need to show real guarantees as a supplier. And so and people, well, it's me. Well, it doesn't matter who you are. Either you show or have those guarantees or you're not in business.
I gave my little house, which I had bought, to guarantee Young and Rubicam.
Good story.
That was my last job because I realized that I could do more with my life.
Right.
And I had this dream of temporary offices set up, with nice furniture and secretaries trained in English and Spanish, and I would be there to help companies start up. So instead of working as a secretary or office manager for a company, they became my clients.
Right. Well, you see, all companies at one time were a startup. So we talk today about startups as if it was a new concept.
Exactly.
It's not a new concept. All companies, and I've worked for companies that were 100 years old, they all started up sometime, and they may not have even had a chair or a table, as you mentioned, but they've all forgotten that. So anybody starting up needs help in the country where they hope to start up.
That's exactly why my company is called Great Start. Because when I was working at Young and Rubicam and they asked me, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to help companies start up in Brazil. And so they came up with the name Great Start and the logo. And that's how they thanked me, because they did my first press releases. I still use the logo, which Young and Rubicam gave me 47 years ago. So my reputation is a problem solver, a top recruiter, you name it, help companies start up. And I look at LinkedIn now, there are so many ads of new companies starting up, and they're still looking, still trying to find the best person. Unfortunately, I can't help them because they don't come to me. So.
Well, you're still the best person. We'll help them find you. Okay, Astrid?
Thank you very much. In the meantime, I help the secretaries who try to get to work for them.
Well, that's a great restart too, right?
Yeah. Mentoring. I enjoy mentoring very much.
And that's still a people business.
Exactly.
Very good. Well, Astrid, I want to thank you for sharing your time with us and your experience. And I know you'll be helping many people in the future finding their great start.
Well, I want to thank you, Tom, because you're doing a great job, and it's really very important for Brazil to have someone like you to promote Brazil to foreigners and show them the ropes. Thank you again very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the compliment. And for our listeners, you can find more about Astrid Rizzi, and it's Astrid, Astrid Rizzi, and obviously you'll find her on LinkedIn, but also on her website, which is greatstart.com.br, greatstart.com.br. I'd like to thank our audience and our sponsor, Focus MI Market Intelligence. Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. More about them on their website, www.focusmi.com. Talk to Brazil podcast can be found on all major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Google, TuneIn, Amazon, YouTube, and many others. Remember, when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Rioch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.